Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. If your kids are younger than that, please use the YouTube Kids app.
Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm Henrey Lee Dogman, filling in for Bigfoot, who has a hot date with the Bell Witch. Before we get started with our 3 all-new Dogman stories, I'd like to point out that today's episode is executive produced by AC, or CS. I'm not sure, she keeps changing her email. Thank you, AC or CS. We couldn't do it without you. If you too would like to be a Scary Stories executive producer, just join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Everyone has heard of the Bridgewater Triangle, that strange area in Massachusetts where people see monsters, UFOs, and Dogman. Well, this story is about a different kind of Bridgewater, Connecticut, and that's why we call it the Bridgewater, Connecticut Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a story that my wife wants me to call the Danbury Dogman because she says it sounds better than the Bridgewater Dogman. But this story didn't take place in either location. It took place in Connecticut, just outside of Bridgewater at the expensive summer home of my boss. Although this happened years ago, he is still my boss, and 2 out of 3 of the other guys in this story are still my co-workers. So I'd like to keep most of the personal details out and just stick to the Dogman parts. So, my boss only used this place in the summer to entertain certain of his rich friends who lived in the area. Back then, he would mostly stay in Danbury during the cold months, but he was already starting to fly south when the weather got cold and work with the rest of us using Skype, phone, FaceTime, text, and emails. He used to pay one of his wife's relatives to watch the summer home for him, but when we all offered to do it for free, he gave each of us keys to the place and allowed us to make our own schedules taking care of it. On the weekends, we would often all be there, all 4 of us. It was a fun time. We would bring girlfriends when we had them, but none of us were really very into dating during that period, so there was a lot of male bonding going on. These days, one of us is married, and the other's engaged, so I guess that was sort of our last big celebration of bachelorhood before we started to move towards settling down. Our boss had the best video and audio equipment, and we had permission to purchase whatever video games we wanted on his dime. Like I said, it was a fun time. Then came the weekend we got snowed in at the house. We were not in any way going to get to leave the place for another 2 days, maybe 3. Our reaction was not fear, not anxiety, and not frustration. Instead, we were like kids finding out that school was canceled because of snow. We could still do about half our work from the house out there, since the internet was still on, but it meant we could stay out there another couple of days, blasting video games at fully immersive top volume. So, it was on Monday night when we took a break from gaming to eat, and we were actually running a horror picture. It wasn't a werewolf movie, it was one of those Asian ghost pictures. I'm not really all that into those, so I was sitting by the window and looking outside at the snow. As I saw this dog hop out from behind some bushes onto the snow where I could see him more clearly. He was on his hind legs, and I expected him to flop forward any second onto all 4s. Instead, he lifted one of his hind legs up very high and sort of hopped a bit forward, planting it in the snow and remaining upright on his hind legs. The snow looked like it was up to the animal's thigh, so it was having a tough time moving forward. I called the guys over to see what I was seeing because I thought the hopping motion the dog was making was kind of funny. I was also amazed that it could remain on its hind legs like that. I thought it was only doing it to keep its face out of the snow. When the guys looked out the window, they saw the same thing I saw out in the night, but their reaction was quite different from mine. They gasped and quieted down, and one of them shut the TV and lowered the interior lighting. They all peeked around corners out of windows on that side of the house, obviously trying to hide themselves from that bouncing dog that I thought was so funny. When I asked them what was up, they told me that we were looking at an actual North American dogman. They were acting so seriously that I had to laugh. I thought they must be imitating a TV show I hadn't seen or something, because those guys were never serious and always joking around. They shushed me and kept staring out the window as the dog hopped onto one leg, then the next. I wondered why none of them were taking a photo, so I got my phone and held it up to the window and tried to take a flash picture because it was so dark out. As soon as the flash went off, the guys all screamed and grabbed me, wrestling me to the floor. They told me to lie still and stay quiet, and we all stayed on the floor for what had to have been a full minute, but felt like a half hour to me. They kept telling me to shut up, and we all stayed on that floor until somebody got up the courage to slowly climb up to the window and peek outside. And when they were able to see outside, what they saw was nothing. Nothing but snow and darkness. There was no trail in the snow leading up to the house, so the animal had to have re-entered the woods where he had come from off in the distance. Once we were sure it was gone, and the guys turned the lights back on, they explained to me that we had just been watching a very dangerous cryptid known as a dogman. If it had become aware of us in that house, it might have haunted us all night. That was why they didn't want me using the flash, and it was too dark to get a photo unless you had a more modern camera than our phones had back then. The photo I took was a blurred reflection of me taking the photo. You couldn't see anything outside of the window at all. So we slept that night, and in the morning, I woke up thinking those guys had been trolling me the night before about being scared of a dog hopping through the snow. I insisted the dog was just a dog, and it was only balancing on its hind legs to avoid suffocating with its nose deep in the wet snow. They held to their story, even in the bright sunlight of morning, and suggested we get a ruler and go take photos of the footprints that the creature must have left. I thought that was a great idea. Why argue when you can just go ascertain the facts of the matter? And so, we searched our boss's place, found a ruler, threw on our jackets and did our own share of hopping in the deep virgin snow over toward where we had seen the dogman, or dog, the night before. And when we got there, we saw more virgin snow, which was confusing. We got as close as we could to the area where the dog had walked, but it was already up to our chests and only piling higher from then on. We looked around, and we looked back at the house, trying to see if we had walked in the wrong direction. I had seen the animal hop out from behind these bushes that were far taller in real life than they had appeared from inside, and I saw the large pine tree that the hopping creature had been skipping and bounding toward. This was definitely the path that it had to have taken, and yet all of the snow was still undisturbed and virgin. Nothing could have possibly walked through there the night before. We got kinda quiet, and we went back inside. Once we got back inside, I put the ruler back where I had found it, and we changed into dry clothes and started talking about something else. We didn't bring it up again until the going away party for the one guy who moved and got work in a different company. That was years later. And even then, after it was brought up, all any of us said was, "Yeah, that was the damnedest thing, wasn't it?" And then we were kind of quiet about it. And then someone changed the subject. It's a kind of thing that none of us can explain, and so it scares us for that reason. We all saw it. We all saw not only that it was moving through snow, but that it was having great difficulty doing so. We saw that the foliage it emerged from was larger than any of us had realized. So the dog would have had to have been extremely large, uncomfortably large. And then we saw that this immense creature left no sign at all of his having once passed that way. We know what we saw, but we have no idea what we saw on the night we were visited by the Bridgewater, Connecticut Dogman. Don't go anywhere. We've got 2 more Dogman stories coming up right after this important message from PQ River.
You know what time is coming soon, don't you? The day of the wearing of the green skin. I'm inviting you to me St. Patrick's Day Dogman Party. The one and only Dr. Death St. Patrick's Day Scary Story Special. An extra long episode, and only us ghouls and ghosts and deceased individuals are invited. Oh, all right. You seem cool. You can come too. It all happens here on the Scary Stories NYC channel, Tuesday, March 17th. Feel free to arrive early. All my other guests are late.
The Mystery Light and the Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I want to tell you a story about how mysterious and inexplicable life itself can be. I don't just want to tell you a story about the Dogman. I want to tell you a story that I hope gets you to think about the Dogman. It's also just about the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I had been stationed in Texas before being sent overseas to Vietnam, and I had met and married a Texas girl that we can call Ednita. When I got out of the Army and came home, this would have been 1972, she moved up to Pennsylvania to be with me. Well, my father and mother did not like her, so we didn't waste any time finding our own place far enough away from my parents that we could live our life in peace and raise a family. Where we ended up was in a tiny house in a tiny town just north of a public game land. We both aimed to hunt for at least part of our diet, as both of us had been raised in that kind of a lifestyle, and that was what we understood. But this story did not happen while we were out hunting. This story happened when we were sitting in our backyard, wooing. I don't know what words you use these days. We were cuddling, listening to the crickets, enjoying the night and each other. Then, suddenly, out of nowhere, came... No, not the Dogman. Be patient for that. Out of nowhere came a whooshing sound, and all of the trees in the backyard started shaking their leaves, but mostly up on top. Then, from a distance in front of us, there was an increasing brightness. It was just that, a kind of brightness in the night that was moving through the sky toward us, accompanied by an ever louder whooshing sound. We both stood up, alarmed. I was on my toes trying to see over the trees and understand what was heading our way. Could it be a comet or fireball? Were we about to blow up? Over those trees came the brightest light there could ever be, just blindingly bright, like as if light could be something solid. That was what was flying over us. Ednita screamed, and I held her, and we both held our eyes shut as we felt it, accompanied by violent winds, pass over our house and out through the night. Neither of us were able to see clearly at first. It took some time for our eyes to readjust to the darkness, and even then, we were seeing spots where our retinas had been burned by the strange light. Just as we were beginning to feel normal again, out of the forest burst a big, dark brown animal from out of prehistory. It was taller than a bear, but colored like a black one. It was lankier than a bear. It was long-legged and running bipedally. It had a head that was kind of like the big bad wolf from the Disney cartoons, and it made my wife scream and cry. I tried to console her, but she pushed me aside and ran back into the house. She always was the smarter of us two. Me? I didn't run. I was too dumbfounded to run, and I guess too curious, too. I watched as the black, upright wolf stared into the sky as it ran. It must have been chasing the blinding light that had passed overhead. Did it know better than I did what that light actually was? I didn't think it had even noticed I was there. It seemed to be so transfixed on the light. I took a step toward the dog bear, and I found out that my assumption was extremely wrong. The dogman, not breaking his stride or slowing down, bared his teeth in my direction and eyed me with eye shine that glowed so brightly that I couldn't even tell for sure if the animal was looking directly at me or not. It was at that moment that I fell out of my stupid, jaw-dropped awe and returned to actual reality, where animals with long fangs are not our friends. I had seen enough, and I ran inside like a little squealing baby pig. That dogman owned me inside of 2 seconds. I went from being intensely curious to not remembering what curiosity was, while I ran for my life back inside the house. When I got back in, Ednita screamed at me for a good half hour that I could have gotten myself killed or worse. That was how she always used to put it after I'd gotten her afraid that I might get hurt. You could have gotten yourself killed or worse. And I suppose I could have. The night we saw the mystery light and the dogman. Why is Dogman attracted to loud children? Dear Scary Stories NYC, I was taking a day off eating a sandwich I had brought with me to this nature center in Michigan near the Pine River. I was sitting on the grass leaning against a tree enjoying the quiet. I had brought my binoculars because my uncle had been teaching me a little bit about bird watching in this area. I only knew a few different kinds, but I hoped to be able to report a rare bird sighting to him. I ended up seeing a rare animal, but it was not one with wings or a beak. I remember a line of trees, either planted by man or manicured by us, as nature doesn't grow trees in lines like that. And I remember that I saw, walking along that line of trees, some kind of odd man. Taking out the binoculars, I zoomed in to find alarming details on the figure that I was observing. It was walking upright like a man, but if it were actually human, then it was some kind of lunatic, because it was wearing a furry costume in the middle of a sunny summer afternoon, right in the middle of Michigan. I observed this animal or crazy person from my great distance, trying to determine what it was exactly that I was observing. If that was a costume, it must have been incredibly difficult to walk in, since the legs seemed to be kind of bent backward midway down the calf. I wondered if the man might be walking on his toes, but if so, then he must have had remarkably unique feet and ankles. The behavior of the creature was peaceful. It was stopping to smell the flowers in the trees and watch the colorful butterflies and so forth. It was just like a man enjoying nature, but it also didn't seem to be a man at all. Its mask, if that was a mask, seemed to move in a natural way, with the ears moving independently of each other. I wanted to get up and move closer to be able to see the thing or person better, but whether it were a madman or a monster, I would not have been prepared to defend myself if it chose to become hostile. I thought about finding a park official and reporting what I was seeing, but I wondered if I would be locked in a mental hospital as though I were the loon and not the guy wearing the fur coat in August. In the quiet, as the animal man meandered in the distance, I was possessed by the illusion that I had an infinity of time to ponder this, and an unlimited window within which to act. In fact, neither was the case. A loud squawking erupted to my right as a family stumbled upon my quiet scene, destroying it. It was 3 young children who didn't look like triplets, but sure did look the same age, followed by their morbidly obese mother. I think she was drooling more than the tykes, who were racing in every direction and falling down over and over while shouting incoherent observations about dinosaurs, ice cream, and a cafeteria in their kindergarten. They were so clumsy and random in all of their movements, I wondered how they could possibly survive into adulthood. Their mother was popping some kind of loud, crunchy junk food into her Jabba the Hutt mouth, rhythmically, while staring into the ether and repeating a mysterious mantra over and over. I thought she was performing a mystical practice with this utterance, until I heard it enough times to comprehend that she was saying, "I don't want to be bothered with it," to her kids over and over. The same response to every single question they screamed at her. I figured that all this noise would have already scared off the weird guy in the werewolf costume, but when I scanned the trees with my binoculars, I found something that to me was very shocking. The Dogman was hiding behind a tree trunk and a rock, its head peeking out over the rock. He was looking back in our direction, and he seemed most interested in the loud kids. There's one more thing, probably the most important thing about this entire narrative. The thing looking at those kids? It had eye shine. Humans don't have eye shine, just so you know. That wasn't a crazy guy out there. It was some kind of animal that walked on its hind legs, had pointed ears, and liked to stalk small human beings. Alarmed, I stood up, with all my goody two-shoes instincts intact. I had to get those kids out of there. I had to warn the mother of the imminent danger facing her clan. I walked resolutely toward the mountainous mom, my arm pointing out where the Dogman was hiding. My mouth was open, inhaling air to form words of warning. My brain was doing its part to form those words, and we were about to be saving the lives of this family. And then, the sweating lady waved her wrist at me in a dismissive manner, not even looking in my direction, and mumbled, "I don't want to be bothered with it," to me, before she popped more junk into her maw. I course-corrected immediately, withdrawing my arm and marching past the woman toward where I had parked my car. I did my best. Some people just don't want to be warned. That's all there is to it. I never found out what happened to that family, but like each and every one of you, of course, I hope they got torn apart by I hope that they got home safe. Although that strange afternoon has caused me to wonder ever since. Why is Dogman attracted to loud children? And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, and absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh, wait. YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then every weekend, we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all-new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story.
If you enjoyed this, please click like or consider subscribing. Remember to click the bell icon or you won't get notifications. If you want to listen to Bigfoot's secret uncensored story each Sunday, just go to peterbernard.com and become a paid subscriber. See you tomorrow. Same dog time, same dog channel.
Come back for more scary stories.